it down right now. They see stories every play, every time with Rob Browne breaking it all down. Yeah. SEC Sideline Sports on my mind. Rob Browne calling game time, highlight shine, executive mind. Brendan Martin keeping Rob in line. Like, subscribe, share it, tell everyone. Sideline Sports, y'all come back real soon. Same place, same time, same tune. From the booth to the field, every Saturday feeling you home. We ride that rivalry, make that living room sound like the zone. From Tiger Growls to Rebel crowds, every hometown heartbeat loud. Rob and Brand turning up that talk like you right there inside the crowd. SEC Sideline Sports on my mind. Rob Browne calling game time, highlight shine, executive mind. Brandon Martin keeping Rob in line. Like, subscribe, share it, tell everyone. Sideline Sports, y'all come back real soon. Same place, same time, same tune. Hey!
They are playing, and they are playing all morning long. Rob Browne in Memphis, Brendan Martin in Ocala, Florida. Look, got a lot to talk about. Brendan had a great time watching basketball.
I had no great times yesterday. I don't want to talk
that made me sick when Florida lost because
it's one thing, dude.
I know, but the SEC's got 4 left. It was
one thing to lose, but to not even get to the Sweet 16 when you're thinking it's a lot. It's a lot today.
Well, it's an interesting
I'm
stat.
having a hard day.
It is, and 8 of the last 9 defending national champions failed to make it to the Sweet 16. It shows you, like your dad, and we all talked about it, enjoy it. You may never see it again, or at least for a long time. Look, do us a favor. Take a picture with your cell phone of the QR code. Our executive producer extraordinaire,
We put them up.
Brendan Martin, he's putting up Twitter, Facebook, YouTube, and Instagram, live streaming on 9 channels.
Like and subscribe and follow. You know what to do.
Yeah,
welcome,
you know what to
boys. I don't want to talk about it.
Well, welcome aboard. Hey, I had a great time over at Rhodes College at the Sigma Newhouse Saturday. Matt, gorgeous. One of the most beautiful campuses in America, and met a lot of people that are watching the show. Britt Summers over in Memphis is a new fan. John Cox up in Nashville. Welcome aboard. Gentlemen, we'll start it off right now. Got to ask Kevin, and then we'll bounce around Kevin and John and Matt and keep it going. But SEC 4 in the Sweet 16, Big Ten 6. Football, 3 national champions in a row for the Big Ten. Is there a little anxiety in the office in Birmingham or among the member schools about, hey, we can't let go of our top spot?
Well, there should be. If there isn't, good morning, everyone. When, one of the biggest surprises of this tournament is the Big Ten getting 6 into the Sweet 16. They'd never done that before. Of course, the SEC set the record last year with 7 in the regional semifinals. And really, the capper was Iowa beating Florida. That's not supposed to happen. I was the 9th place team in the Big Ten. They have 12 losses. And you're playing them in your home state, and Iowa controlled the game. Florida had a nice spurt in the midway through the second half to pull even and then pull ahead, but then a disastrous series of sequences at the end of the game. Todd Golden got outcoached, guys. He's very, very good, but he had one of his worst days of the office at one of the worst times to have it, and as a result, their guards weren't good enough in the end. We talked about that early in the season. They certainly got better as the year went along. They were dominating the most. Boogie Fland and Xavier Lee were not good enough.
Yeah, Matt, you watched it. You're a coach. Your thoughts on that ending, especially the ending of the Florida-Iowa game in Tampa?
Well, Kevin's right on everything he just said. I will say from a coaching perspective, too, There's no reason in that situation to trail, and maybe Boogie got lost, but you keep the defender, the offensive man in front of you. Worst case scenario, it's a home game and you go to overtime. If they come down, you take away the 3 ball, you have no help and recover rules, and you don't leave open shooters. And they had held Bennett Sturts, Iowa's best player, to 0 of 9 from 3. So Iowa wasn't going to get a 3 off the bounce. It was going to be a catch and shoot. And when they did that, I was thinking, oh my gosh, this is the perfect scenario for Iowa. Iowa didn't want overtime. They were in foul trouble. Florida had made their run in the second 10 minutes of the second half. Iowa helped them by missing the front end of 2 1-and-1s. But the reality is Golden got out-coached. And that game was in Tampa. There's no way Florida shouldn't win that game. But I will tell you this, proud Iowan. I grew up in the state, follow Iowa really, really well. Ben McCollum has done a really nice job in year 1. And I know he's got 12 losses, Kevin. Now, they've had some really close losses. They played Michigan, a 3-point game late in the season. They did beat Nebraska at home, lost to them in overtime on the road. I still think, looking at what we got left, Alabama's performance last night was phenomenal. The way they shot the 3. We've talked about when Alabama shoots a 3, they can play with anyone. We had Gary on last week, and we thought Alabama's ceiling may be the Sweet 16. But I'm going to tell you what, they shoot that way against Michigan, they can beat Michigan too. Now, if you look at my team that I had in the Final Four, Arkansas, that's going to be an unbelievable game. Arizona and Arkansas coming up in the Sweet 16. I also think that Illinois-Houston is going to be a tremendous game because Illinois was one of my sleeper teams going in. But Florida did not come out, like Kevin said, they weren't ready to get after them. It's almost like the way I thought Duke looked against Siena in the first half of their game. Iowa came out in a hostile environment and controlled the tempo. And really, I thought Florida's defense did a great job on Bennett Sturts the whole time. It was some of Iowa's other players, like Fulgaris, who hit the game-winning shot, like Tavian Banks, who had 20 and 6. Those were the guys that I had no idea could step up when Sturts wasn't having his normal game.
Yeah. John Hartwell, the West, you're old school, Utah State, the Aggies played Arizona for a chance to get to the Sweet 16, but your takeaways from what happened yesterday. 4 SEC teams still alive, but boy, Florida's one that I did think would get to the Final Four, but I didn't think it would be easy for sure.
Yeah, I had the Gators getting there. So, everything that Kevin and Matt said is spot on. Here's an additional thing regarding the SEC. Not only what happened over the weekend and obviously the Big Ten getting 6 in, but look at the lines going forward on the games involved, the 4 games involving SEC teams. Purdue and Texas. Purdue a 7.5-point favorite. That one's probably right. I mean, again, I think Purdue. I had Purdue making the Final Four. I think Matt Painter's a heck of a coach, and they've got the tools there. But Arkansas an 8.5-point dog to Arizona. Now, I think a lot of that may have to do with Arizona's size, because that's one of the things that Utah State encountered yesterday. But I think Arkansas can learn from Utah State, because if you let it get into a half-court game, Arizona is really, really good. But if you can pressure Arizona's guards, create some turnovers, which Utah State did when they made that run in the second half, you can be in the game. The one that mystifies me, and yes, taking nothing away from Michigan, Alabama a 10.5-point dog to Michigan. And I think Nate Oates is probably going to play that up all week and say, hey, look at what we've overcome. People still don't respect us. And we've talked about it all season long with what he has done with, changing parts, hadn't really had the same lineup many games. I would not bet against Alabama right now. And then the last one, Tennessee, a lot of people had forgotten about Tennessee. Don't forget this. Just like Michigan State, you got Tom Izzo coaching. Don't bet against him. I wouldn't bet against Rick Barnes either. And they're a 4.5-point dog to Iowa State.
Yeah. Kevin, all SEC teams in the Sweet 16 are dogs. Start with that.
Well, that points to what we've talked about during the season, that while this is still, we thought maybe this will change with what happens going forward with the Big Ten. We thought the SEC was the deepest conference in the country, but it just didn't have the same number of elite teams that it did last year.
Yeah.
When it put 7 in the Sweet 16 and 4 in the Elite 8 and 2 in the Final Four, and Florida won it all. And that's borne out by these lines. You know, they're not expected to go beyond where they are. The best team in the league just got knocked out. But watch Alabama. As John pointed out, you know, they've had 14 different starting lineups this year. That's the 5th most in Division I out of 360 something teams. Nate Oates has done a fantastic job. Nate Oates is he's a great coach from November through March, but he's especially good in March. Go back to 2021. He started his first year at Alabama was the COVID year. There was no tournament. They weren't going to make it anyway. They were 16 and 15. But starting in his second year, there are only 3 coaches in America that have won more NCAA tournament games than Nate Oates. Kelvin Sampson has 18. Danny Hurley has 15. Mark Few from Gonzaga has 14. And Nate Oates now has 13. That's the new Alabama record. That's one more than Wimp Sanderson won in his 12 years. So Nate Oates is really, really good at this time of year. And if there's a mismatch in this game, people will point to Michigan's front court, and rightly so. Michigan's guards don't match up with Alabama's very well. Michigan's point guard, Elliot Cadeau, transfer from North Carolina, he's not elite. And their backup, who could start for a lot of teams, LJ Kayson, is out for the year. Watch that guard matchup in that game. That gives Alabama a shot.
Yeah. Nate Oates gets a lot of grief. Crisis management is something he's really good at. And I tell you what, we're fair on this show. I don't care who you're a fan of or whatever, where you went to school. You got to give him credit. He's passed Winifred E. Wimp Sanderson, proud native son of Florence, Alabama, up in the Quad Cities. And I don't think people thought that was going to be the case when they were bringing Charles Bediako back earlier in the season. Matt, as a coach, 14 different starting lineups. I just, when I'm watching games and I'm thinking about John Hartwell as the AD, he's like the casino manager running 21 tables. If you've got 21 sports, you're having to keep up with a lot. But as a coach, your takeaways from what you saw.
You know,
14 starting lineups, that would drive me crazy.
The last game of the day, watching Alabama, the energy they played with, you know, Kevin's right. I mean, I think they can beat Michigan. I said it a little bit earlier. I really do. I watched Michigan. Michigan went 19-1 in the Big Ten, but they were susceptible down the stretch. A lot of people have kind of, I don't want to say figured them out, but like it's a matchup game, guys. And we talked about on this show for weeks. Alabama, when they're making threes, really puts a lot of stress on your perimeter defense. You have to do things you're normally not accustomed to as a defensive coach. I just think Alabama, you know, I like Arkansas's chances too. And John's spot on. I think Arkansas can speed them up a little bit and take advantage of what they do. I'll tell you, there's the great thing about this tournament. I was watching Iowa State, Kentucky yesterday. Iowa State is without their best player, Josh Jefferson, first team All-American. Kentucky gets off to a 20-9 lead. Okay. And you're thinking, oh, they got him where they want. TJ takes that media interview, timeout, which I don't like in game, but they do it. And he's basically saying, hey, look, our defense is a 40-minute defense. This is when he's down 20-9. We're going to figure right the ship. Iowa State takes the lead on the last shot of the first half. And the second half, they put on a clinic. They forced over 20 turnovers against Kentucky. And it wasn't full court pressure, guys. We're talking half court man pressure. There's so many matchups. How about St. John's, their effort to beat Kansas last night? I thought Michigan State looked as good as anyone this weekend, too. There's some great Sweet 16 games. I'm going to tell you what, Illinois and Houston is going to be a heavyweight fight. The winner of that game should get to the Final Four. No disrespect to my Hawkeyes or Nebraska, but Illinois is a really good basketball team, well coached by Brad Underwood. And then in the other side, the Arkansas-Arizona winner, I know we're not talking a lot about Purdue. John mentioned it. He had him in his Final Four. Purdue has a great point guard, a great quarterback in Braden Smith. He just set the all-time NCAA record, beating Bobby Hurley's assist record. So there are so many great stories left in this tournament. We kind of thought that there would be some of these upsets. I never expected Florida to lose to Iowa. I know Iowa inside and out. I've watched them all year. They didn't have the roster depth to beat Florida, especially inside. So now that Florida's out, I think the winner of Nebraska and Iowa will give Illinois and Houston a game. But if that's in Houston, and if Houston beats Illinois, that's a tall task.
Yeah. John Hartwell, we talked about it Thursday on the show with Kane Thomas was on with us. He said he was going to move to Nebraska for all that free Bud Light. Apparently they sold a lot of it. But you, again, you are such a traveled athletic director. You've been all over the country. And Kevin, you have too, and you have Matt. But as an athletic director at Nebraska, you've got to be just loving this. And maybe some of Warren Buffett's money will find its way to Nebraska basketball. He lives in the same house he's lived in for about 60 years and drives a 15 or 20-year-old car. Maybe he's too cheap to do it. But if he does, could Nebraska, could Lincoln? I mean, look at Iowa State. I think Middle America is on fire right now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, it's an exciting time to be a Cornhusker. You know, Troy Dannon is the AD at Nebraska. He was the AD at Tulane when they really kind of got football going. He's done a really nice job there. Okay. But the important thing is that they continue to invest the resources. You know, you look down the 16 teams that are in the Sweet 16. 15 of those 16 are in the Power Four, and then you've got UConn, and you can really say, hey, they're power. You can call it Power Five if you want to, and men's basketball, and loop them in there. So the investment is really important. In fact, I see Maury Gaston had a comment up there and was talking about the article on Utah State, and you know, just for comparison, Utah State went from about $880,000 invested in NIL to about $2.4 million. By the way, that's about 1/10 of reportedly what the Wildcats invested in, and Mark Pope and company are already at home. So I would, I know they're in transition with Mitch Barnhart stepping down as the AD, retiring there. But I think I'd do a deep dive if I were spending $22 million and couldn't get any more chemistry on the court than what the Wildcats mustered. But I mean, it's, you know, Nebraska, Iowa State, again, hats off to what the Big Ten has done. And I think it's really important for people to understand the success is intentional. And I can even drop it down to, you know, whether it's the old Mountain West Conference, and I know that's breaking up. But what was invested then in men's basketball? And you say, well, what all has to be invested? Well, you know, really from a recruiting standpoint, you've got to invest in charter flights. You've got to invest in buy games and being strategic with those buy games. I thought one of the best interviews from a coach over the weekend was Matt Painter talking about his scheduling. And he kind of called out the folks in the MAC because, you know, there were a couple of coaches in the MAC saying, hey, we can't get anybody to play us. We can't get anybody to play us. And the gist of what Matt had to say was, hey, don't lump everybody in that, because we are strategic in our scheduling. We try to schedule in terms of net rankings. Some of the higher ranked, you know, group of 5 schools are non-P4 schools in there. So there's a lot of dynamics that go in there, but hats off to what they've done in Lincoln.
No, and John, God, I love this insight. You as an athletic director, these names roll off your tongue with ease because you know them. And that's interesting. Tulane's AD that got football going is now at Nebraska after Trev Alberts left to go to Aggie land and be their athletic director. Kevin, what about that game last night? UConn and UCLA, 73-57. Hurley versus Mitt Cronin. Is Mitt Cronin, I wonder if he knows Dave Doran, the miserable football coach at NC State. Can we get a smile from Dave for $1,000? Were you surprised at that? Hurley and UConn, I don't know what they spend on NIL, but that guy can coach his ass off. He's just fantastic. Yeah, and there's a fun fact, and I don't have the exact year when this started, but don't let UConn get to the Sweet 16. Because in 2011, they got to the Sweet 16, they won it all. 2014, they got to the Sweet 16, they won it all. 2023, 2024, ditto and ditto. It's been a long time since they got to the Sweet 16 that they didn't win the national championship. There's an incredible tradition there. It would have been an upset if somebody hadn't gotten a technical foul in that game, and of course, Mitt Cronin did late.
he said he didn't say anything. I don't know what really transpired there. I was bouncing back and forth, spending most of my time on the Alabama game. But no, UConn is very dangerous. You've got the winningest player in school history in Alex Caravan on that roster, and you've got who's the new guy who had the monster game in the first round. I can't even remember his name, but no, don't count out UConn. And you've got two, I guess, John, you've got two non-Power 4 schools in UConn and St. John's in the Sweet 16. Don't want to leave out Rick Pitino, who I still maintain is a vampire who will never die. He's 400 years old, still coaching at an incredibly high level. And how about his reaction to the game winner by Darling, who did not make a basket all game long, and he takes it to the goal and lays it up through contact for the game winner. And Pitino, he's totally deadpan, doesn't have any expression on his face, and I suspect that some of that at least was out of respect for Bill Self. And knowing how much it hurts to lose a game in that fashion, obviously happened to Pitino with Kentucky and the Christian Laettner shot many years ago. Yeah. And I thought that was a masterclass in how to handle winning and losing the same and to have respect for your opponent.
Yeah. Well, watching it, look at it, the vampire. Transylvania. What if he went back and coached at Transylvania State in Lexington? Would that not be ironic? Him and Danny Sheridan. That would be classic. That would be fun. But I mean, this is the first Sweet 16, y'all, for St. John since '99. That's
hard to believe, isn't it?
Yeah.
Given that program's tradition, and of course the first one since 1999 for Iowa.
Yeah,
they used to be a regular in the Sweet 16. Go back to Dr. Tom Davis, and the first ever for Nebraska to get to the Sweet. They won their first tournament game ever against Troy in the first round. I was really impressed. I thought Troy would give them a game, and Nebraska just shot the lights out and completely. They did what a favorite is supposed to do to an underdog, with that wide of a disparity in seeds, and took control of that game in the first half. Fred Hoiberg obviously knows what he's doing, so. No, there's a lot of good coaches, a lot of good players, and a lot of good games left in this tournament going forward.
Well, it'll be the great battle of the cornfield, Nebraska versus Iowa. Although the number one corn-producing state in America is Illinois. It's also got great pheasant hunting. That's no coincidence. Matt, what he just said, talking about St. John's, how can you not win? If you don't have the right coach, you're going to lose anywhere you are. But with all the talent in the New York City area, Nebraska, how are they doing it? And look, we saw Indiana have their greatest season in school history this past year, and Vanderbilt greatest season win-wise in the same year. So NIL's working and the portal's working, but I don't know, on the list of schools that had yet to ever win an NCAA basketball game coming into this season, has Penn State ever done it, Kevin?
I think they have. I think they've won a game. I don't know how far they've gotten before.
Okay. All right. So, Matt, take it from there.
No, I just think Fred Hoiberg's done a marvelous job with that program. And they were undefeated for a long time this year. They got some losses later in the Big Ten. They still had a good enough record and quality enough wins to be a 4 seed. I think if you look at Nebraska, one of the things they did in the last 3 minutes of that game, they switched to zone, which was kind of surprising. And it really kind of settled everything down for them. I thought Vanderbilt played a phenomenal basketball game. I thought that was one of the better games of the weekend. And that 55-60 footer, I think from Tanner, it looked like it was going in. And how, it was funny. Fred actually said in the post-game interview, I saw him maybe with Andy Katz, but it talks about the inflated of the balls you get. Because I will tell you, when I coached in the NCAA tournament, they send you these balls you have to use, and they're just like rocks. And you try to take a little bit of air out of them. But, man, that ball hit in the square, and it rattled in 2 or 3 times and popped out. I really thought it was in. But that Nebraska team, they mix up their defenses. They have perimeter shooting. Price Sanford is a transfer from Iowa, really good perimeter shooter. I think he had the record for 3-point field goals make for a Nebraska player. And they're well coached. I mean, let's not forget, Fred Hoiberg used to coach the Chicago Bulls, then came back to Nebraska. I think Kevin and John, interesting fact, I think his grandfather used to be the coach in Nebraska back in the 50s and 60s. I'm not sure about that, but I heard that. And I think the Nebraska-Iowa matchup is intriguing for many ways. You know, people in the SEC, and this is an SEC show, we talk about rivalries, right? Auburn, Alabama. There's some great rivalries in the SEC. Well, Iowa, Nebraska in football is just like hatred. And you're going to see some Nebraska-Iowa fans in that parking lot getting after each other outside that game, because that's going to be like their Super Bowl. And then I'll tell you another game. I really thought, I think if you look at the next round, Michigan State and UConn, what a great game. I actually think the winner of that game will beat the winner of Duke and St. John's. I'll tell you what, I was so impressed with Michigan State, and I watched a lot of Big Ten. I thought Jeremy Fears, he did something, and you think about the history of point guards at Michigan State, Irvin Magic Johnson, all right? Go back to Mateen Cleaves. He has had, I think, he set the record for most assists in an NCAA tournament game, and quite frankly, they guard. Teams that guard, that's why Iowa State, even without their best player, dismantled Kentucky. That $22 million whatever roster, John. If you watch the clinic they put on defensively, the ball pressure, I mean, they just forced turnover after turnover. It was embarrassing if you're a Kentucky fan yesterday.
Yeah. John Hartwell, you're the new AD at Kentucky. It's Monday morning. That's my favorite day of the week. I love Monday mornings. I've already been up, got a lot of things happening. Would you be calling, Mark Pope into your office this morning, or would you wait till the afternoon to have a discussion about, look, we gave you all the money you asked for, and, it's not working. What can we do to help you? Or it'd be crazy. I don't think they're not going to get rid of him because the buyout's too much. But what's the conversation you would want to have?
Yeah, I'd say there's got to be some change in how they operate happening.
Okay.
But the interesting thing is with the transition in the AD, and I know Mitch has been there a long time. I'm sure he'll be involved, but at the same time, you've got the situation where Mark Pope's saying, well, hey, this isn't going to be my boss here in, another 6 weeks or 8 weeks. So it's kind of an interesting dynamic, but clearly they've got to do something different. And is it, the GM that they have, is it looking at the roster? And I've said this for, 6 weeks or so, it just did not seem the chemistry on the court. You had the guys on the court going in totally different directions. And you guys all know this, maybe in basketball more than anything else, if you don't have the chemistry, you are not going to have success. I don't care how much individual talent you have, because the one thing that's not changing, they're not ever going to put more than one ball on the court at a time. So if only one guy can get a shot up each time down, and you've got other guys on the floor who are going to pout about not getting their shots up, it doesn't matter how much talent you have. So something's got to change at Kentucky. It'll be interesting to see with that. And part of that is, and hey, this is why it's a business now. It used to be, oh, well, you can't counsel a guy out. You can't say he's gone. If I'm the head coach at Kentucky, which I'm obviously not, you got to look at the pieces to the puzzle, and not just how many points and rebounds per game they can bring, but hey, are they a chemistry builder? Or are they a chemistry killer? And you got to get rid of the chemistry killers.
I agree. Kevin, thinking about this, 2014, SEC Athletic Director, Commissioner Mike Schlive talked about, we got to improve the basketball product in the SEC. We got an SEC network contract coming up. We can't put garbage on TV. They're not going to pay us. Look what's happened since then. Kentucky basketball since 2014-15 season compared to the rest of the SEC. You probably know, if not, it'd be a cool story to go in depth when everybody else in the SEC put their foot on the gas and said, all right, we're going to start making basketball matter. We're going to put money into it. It's going to be important. What's happened to Kentucky? We know this. Florida's won a national championship since 2014. Kentucky's last one was 2012. And they're not in the Sweet 16 again, despite spending more money than anybody.
Yeah, this is the longest stretch ever of Kentucky missing the Elite Eight. They haven't been there since 2019 when Auburn beat them in overtime to advance to Auburn's first Final Four. So you got a problem there because everyone else in the SEC is investing in basketball. They are taking it more seriously than ever. I compiled the number of wins in the NCAA tournament by SEC teams collectively since the tournament went to 64 teams in 1985. Go back to 2009, the SEC won one SEC tournament game. One total, the whole conference. They won 4 in 2013. They won 3 in 2016. Last year, they won 23.
Wow.
This year, they've won 13 through 2 rounds. And that is already third all time for the conference in most wins in an NCAA tournament. They had 14 wins back in 1996. That's when Kentucky and Mississippi State both made the Final Four, and Kentucky won it with Mark Pope as a player. So the last 2 years, think about that. 36 NCAA tournament wins by the SEC the last 2 years. That's not a mistake. It's because of investment. It's because they brought on Garth Glissman doesn't get enough credit. He is essentially the associate commissioner for basketball. And just to give you a couple of examples, they talked about scheduling, how you schedule, who you schedule, how you build up the metrics that will get more teams into the NCAA tournament. And last year they got 14, which is the record. This year they got 10. I was told not that long ago, another thing they've done is work with their coaches and officials to understand how the game will be called in the NCAA tournament. One of the criticisms of Rick Barnes, and there aren't many, is he hasn't gotten Tennessee to the Final Four. But he, like Alabama, is in his 4th straight Sweet 16. And one of the things that people have always commented on is, Tennessee turns most games into a rock fight in the league, and they get away with it. They're allowed to play more physical. Then they get to the NCAA tournament. There's a softer whistle, and that works against them. So they have actually studied that and how the game is called in the NCAA tournament to work with their officials to make the regular season games mirror more closely the NCAA tournament games to give their teams a better chance to advance.
Well, Matt, I brought that up because when people start prioritizing a sport, it changes. I mean, Kentucky for a long time, they did. We're the only one. And it's just a different ball game. And I don't think they're handling that reality very well because, look at Florida. About $9 million, I think, is what I was told they spent on NIL this year. And they were a 1 seed. Now they're out. But you look at Kentucky, allegedly $22 million. And I go back to, I think, 2022 when St. Peter's beat Kentucky on that Thursday night. I'll never forget. Oscar Tshiebwe was the only player, along with one other, on the Kentucky roster that looked visibly upset after the loss. And it was pointed out that 11 players on Kentucky's roster then made more money off of NIL than the $200,000 coaching contract St. Peter's head basketball coach was making, Matt.
I think Kevin gives great perspective. Those are great numbers, Kevin. And just let's look at the Florida-Iowa game. If Florida wins that game, they have 5 in the Sweet 16. The Big Ten has 5. And that makes it 14 wins. And we're talking about, hey, we could still have 2 teams in the Final Four with Florida on the left side of the bracket. We got 3 in the right side of the bracket, 4 in the right side of the bracket. So I just think they have invested more. Kudos to what they've done strategically, because it is true. Last home NCAA tournament game I coached, we had our 2 stars in foul trouble, 4 fouls to go with 16 minutes to go in the game. Now we came back, it was 1 possession game, but playing 10 minutes without your best player because of foul trouble. It looked like, happened a little bit last night with Florida. They had foul trouble last night as well, as did Iowa. I didn't really like the crew that much in the Iowa-Florida game, but like Kevin says, it's officiated differently at this level or this time of year. I think if you look at perspective, that's why we're still on an upward trajectory in the SEC. We are investing more. We're having some really good rosters. Look at Vanderbilt's a great exception. I will tell you this, guys. When I watched the Vanderbilt-Nebraska game, as an Iowa fan, I said, you know what? We may be able to play with Florida. And I hate to do this because I'm a coach, but you look at the matchups, what Florida did in the SEC championship game against Vanderbilt and how Vanderbilt played against Nebraska. Iowa split with Nebraska. I said, maybe this matchup, Iowa was one of the least effect. Their pace of play is like in the 340s or 350s, right? If you can slow the game down and take away the transition offense, how about this? Florida was plus 15 on the glass all year. Yesterday, rebounding the basketball, it was even, guys. That's what won Iowa the game. Florida did not dominate the glass. We talk about shot making, but rebounding matters, and it really mattered in the Florida-Iowa game yesterday. But Kevin's spot on. I think the investment the SEC's made, and it would not shock me if one of these four teams, I could see Alabama or Arkansas getting to the Final Four. I'm not sure Texas can do it. I would love to see Rick Barnes get there, but they have, that Iowa State game. You talk about a rock fight. Iowa State, Tennessee, man, there's going to be some boulders in that game.
There will
one
be.
thing, let me jump on there, Matt, on that point. How many times do you see it when a team loses its best player or loses a very important player, and they just come out, and it took them a little while to adjust, as Matt pointed out. Kentucky got out early, but without Justin Jefferson. But, man, Iowa State came back and just lit it up in the second half and completely shut down Kentucky. Now, maybe when you have a little more time, maybe it's not, you don't quite have that same adrenaline. Hey, we're going to show the world that we're more than Justin Jefferson, that we're a team, and they are. TJ's done a great job there. That's a program. And all of these programs have a toughness about them. If you notice, that's one thing that I think if there's a common thread in these Sweet 16 teams, they're not. Now, Alabama can look pretty because they knock down threes, but they got after it on defense in a way. I joked, was that the best Alabama's played defense since the 2012 or the 1993 Sugar Bowl? I mean, they were all over Texas Tech on defense. They were all over the boards. I mean, they out-rebounded Texas Tech by a dozen or so. So, that is something to keep an eye out for. You got to have a toughness about you to be able to deal with things. But I wonder if Iowa State will be as effective as they were with a little more time to think about it, with a little more time to realize, hey, we don't have our stud. Look, they're still a very good basketball team, as Kentucky found out. They're still capable of winning that game. And I don't know if they can win two and get to the Final Four, but that's something to keep an eye out for. A lot of times you see that immediate bounce. We're going to show the world that we're more than one great player.
Yeah, and you look at Arkansas, John Hartwell, people say they're not real deep. I mean, you can have 13 on scholarship. Most schools carry 10 or 11. If your top 6 or 7 are really good, you can go far. Most people I know that really know Arkansas say they've got 6. Cal is rejuvenated. He's a young guy. He's passionate about, and he stayed too long at Kentucky. We know he did. 15 years. Sometimes you just wear out that you get tired of each other. But he's found his energy again. Darius Acuff Jr. could be the number 1 pick in the draft. Arizona, Tommy Lloyd. You know him from his days as an assistant at Gonzaga. By the way, was it 26 straight years Mark Few and Gonzaga have made it to the tournament? Absolutely amazing. And that's a guy that just said, I'm never leaving. I love it here. But can Arkansas pull off the win?
Yeah, they can. But again, the style of play is going to have to be, they're going to have to do something to neutralize the size of Arizona's front line. And I think that's going to be some pressure. It's got to be, they've got to get up and down the court. Although that's one thing about that's made Arizona so successful. Yeah, they got those big guys, but they can run the floor. Those guys, very athletic, even across their front line. And it's, Arkansas is also going to have to keep their guards out of foul trouble. And Matt made a great point about rebounding, especially offensive rebounding, because you look at the number of fouls that are called on offensive rebound putbacks. And with Arkansas's lack of depth, if they get in foul trouble, it's going to be a long day, and Arizona's going to dominate the game. But I certainly think that Cal will have a game plan ready. I want to go back to Kevin's point about Pitino. He has coached in the Sweet 16 in 5 different decades now, the 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and 20s. I mean, that's an amazing stat right there. But hey, for those of us that are on the backside of 50, hey, age is a state of mind. It's not a number. Come on, guys, keep going.
That's right, John. And he's done it with 4 different schools.
Yeah.
Providence, Kentucky, Louisville, and now St. John's.
That's right. That's right.
Well, as a
Amazing.
shout out to the legendary character, the Count on Sesame Street, and your reference to Dracula and Rick Pitino, a one, a two, a three, a four. How much fun would it be to be at some great Italian restaurant in Brooklyn, hanging out after the season's over, of course, with Rick Pitino and hearing stories, Bill Self, throw in the ghost of Raleigh Massimino. This is what we grew up with basketball. God, I love this sport. And it's the only sport I've ever seen where people who don't even care about sports are invested because they're in an office bracket. Like I said, Lois, who ran our back office for commission checks for years, won it a few times, and she didn't pay attention. She just logically picked without getting all caught up. Kevin, another story. High Point pushed Arkansas. And I'm sure there are going to be a lot of people writing stories about how are they doing it at High Point, North Carolina. Apparently, that was a cool story. And that young man, the student broadcaster, I'm sure his resume is out there. That guy was pretty cool, but that's what we love about basketball. Matt, again, I always say this, D1, D2, D3, it doesn't matter. Kevin, you and Franz write about college basketball with the same energy and passion as you do about football. No one else. I don't see people. It's almost impossible to do that. And you know Andy Kennedy, you know that UAB program. You're so active on Twitter. What are you writing about today, your columns and everything where people can follow you? And you've got a great podcast on this channel, Scarbo Knows.
Well, in about 45 minutes last night after the Alabama game, I wrote a column that will be linked on AL.com here shortly this morning, talking about a subject you mentioned earlier, the rivalry, non-rivalry between Alabama and UAB. Of course, Alabama refuses to play UAB. They played that one time in the NIT in '93. UAB won it. This is as close as we will come to an Alabama-UAB game. Michigan's coach, Dusty May, was an assistant at UAB under Mike Davis, who was a former Alabama player.
Yes.
Michigan star Yaxel Lendeborg spent the last 2 years at UAB honing his game. I keep saying he was built by UAB, and Andy Kennedy did a fantastic job there, and now he's one of the best players in the country. So, and of course, Michigan also has a former Alabama player in Namari Burnett, who spent 2 years with the Crimson Tide. So a lot of ties between these programs. That's the game, of course, naturally I'm most interested in this weekend. But yeah, check me out on Twitter at Kevin Scarbinsky. And then, of course, the columns on AL.com and the podcast on this network and on YouTube, Kevin Scarbinsky Scarbo Knows.
Yeah, and it is great stuff, people. And you'll get, once you subscribe, you will get a ding every time they go live. Executive producer Brendan Martin and Kevin, these are great podcasts. They're 30 to 45 minutes. Share them with all your friends. You'll be smarter for it. Matt, now, the coaching. You can't help. I have a lot of respect. I don't know Tom Izzo. Y'all have all met him, probably know him. I don't. But I love hard-driven people. And he's been to 8 or 9 Final Fours. And I think the stat on Arizona, is it correct, Matt? This is their 8th or 9th number 1 seed as a one. There are 4, obviously. Is that correct with Arizona? Because we all know the great program Lute Olson built out there in the desert. And it just, they're rock steady.
You know, I'm going to probably defer to Kevin on stats today when it comes to basketball. But let me just say this. I had a
statologist.
When I think it was 97, being in Memphis and having a gym in Memphis, when these teams, when we have a regional we host, I had a chance in 94 to watch Nolan Richardson's team practice. I watched Lute Olson's team practice in 97. I believe it was the Flintstones with Mateen Khalib in 2000, maybe in 99. I'm not sure, Kevin, on
2000.
that. When Michigan State won the title. But like the commonality, and I think Kevin and John touched on it earlier, this group of teams left, I don't think I've seen a collection of more toughness than some of these teams portray. And you know, it's ironic when you think about NIL and all this money we're spending, sometimes that doesn't always equate to toughness. Going back to John's analogy, I agree, John. All that money they spent, Kentucky, didn't really equate to on the floor toughness or chemistry or continuity like you're talking about. And I think there has to be a combination of retention of good high school talent and addition of portal. And I think Michigan, Dusty Mason, done a really good job of that. And what Kevin mentioned, some of the players in their roster, they were developed at other places and took their game to a next level with a collection of roster. And usually you have to have height to win deep in the tournament because rebounding matters. But I got to tell you what, there's two guards I want to mention right now that I watched play this weekend. High Point, Rob Martin, their point guard, phenomenal, was outstanding. He went head-to-head with Darius Acuff Jr., and that was a really good game. And how about Taman Lipsey, Iowa State? Really nice player. And the great thing about the tournament, we find out about new names. Now, these guys may never make an NBA roster, okay? But I'm going to tell you what, for collegiate player purposes, they were outstanding this weekend.
Yeah, and you talked about the toughness. And if you're afraid, there's a great quote. I've got this 15 sentences that live rent-free in my head. On the top of the list, fear doesn't stop death, it stops life. You can't be scared. It makes you think about what you're doing. But John, again, as an athletic director, man, and Matt, you've been an AD, associate AD, coach. John, you played in college. Matt, you were a manager in college. Kevin, you've been covering it. The pressure now as you keep climbing up the ladder, the success. As an athletic director, you're watching, but you're also looking at coaches around the country. If you're thinking about making a move, I think it's very dangerous getting a coach that gets hot in the tournament from a mid-major, because that's a few games maybe. It's different when you got to do it every day, isn't it?
Well, it is, but you look at the characteristics of those coaches. I mean, you can't get caught up in a 2 or 3 game, sample. You've got to look at the body of work. But hey, what kind of team do they have? How do kids respond? That's why, when I was actively looking at coaches, I looked at some things that weren't necessarily what was on the floor. Yeah, what's on the floor is important. But hey, how do guys respond in a timeout? When you have a timeout, are all 14, 15 guys locked in the timeout, or do you have some watching the cheerleaders or, playing grab butt with each other or whatever? Or is everybody locked into what's going on? And I think that's really important when you see what kind of impact a coach has on their team. And I hate to keep going back to Nate Oates, but you look at him. He's got guys locked in, because I promise you, if you're not locked in, he is going to light you up. He's not going to do it in an embarrassing way, because he's got a ton of class. He's not going to do it like a Mick Cronin does and sends a guy off the court, but he's going to get his message across. And that's really important when you look at how kids respond, because all 16 teams that are left are going to have outstanding game plans. They've got, 4 days, 5 days to prepare. They're going to have outstanding game plans going into their game. But when the bullets start flying, maybe that's a bad analogy right now. When the ball is tipped, you got to be able to make in-game changes, adjust to what the other team's doing, adjust to your situation. We saw it 2 or 3 times here in weekend 1. You got one of your key players goes down hurt, you may have to totally change your game plan.
Yeah.
And those coaches who can make in-game adjustments like that, and here's what's really important too. It's not just the head coach. I hear people all the time saying, well, hell, there's more suits on the bench than there are people in uniform. Well, you better have you a good staff, and not just the guys looking at the iPad saying, oh, who was that out of bounds off? Should we challenge that play? You better have guys who are looking at everything that's happening on the floor and be able to make adjustments.
Yeah, I agree with that. And
Rob, let me jump in here and follow up on John's point. End of the first half yesterday, the Alabama game. They're winning 49-23. They have the last possession. They commit a careless turnover, and Texas Tech goes down and hits a floater at the buzzer. It's still 49-25. You're still up 24 points. Everybody in Alabama is celebrating. They do the halftime interview on the radio with Nate Oates on the Crimson Tide Network. He is angry. He's angry at the careless turnover at the end of the half. He's not focused on the big lead and all the good things they did. He's angry about that lapse in judgment in those last 20 seconds of the first half. So he's still grinding even with a huge lead. And I thought that was a great teaching moment right there, that he knows there's still 20 minutes left in the game. He knows more than anybody the way they shoot the three that big leads can evaporate in a hurry in college basketball. So he's still coaching his team. And that was just a great example of the way Nate Oates does his job. And to your point also about assistant coaches, how many teams are hiring head coaches off of your staff? Brian Hodgson, former Nate Oates assistant, did a great job at South Florida. Now he just got the Providence job. Antoine Petway, longtime Alabama assistant under a number of coaches, former Alabama player who won a game in the NCAA tournament, set him off on a run to the Elite Eight back in 2004. He gets hired at Kennesaw State. They just played in the NCAA tournament. That's another sign of a really good head coach when he is developing head coaches on his staff.
Yeah. Yeah, you never stop coaching. I mean, we all remember a very visible example. Alabama's up like 37-3 late in a game against Mississippi State. A.J. McCarron makes a foolish turnover, and Nick Saban just ripped into him like a pack of hornets. And I
spanked him.
But yeah,
spanked him when he got to the sideline.
I think about, I mean, if you want to be great at anything, you got to play the full 40 or the full 60, and careless errors, they can bite you later on. I mean, and you know, there's no risk, no story, Matt. I mean, this is when you take the guys that make the winning shots. What did Michael Jordan say? Yeah, I've missed it. I've taken it 1,000 times to get it right that one time. You just remember when you get it. Classic example is the winning shot in the St. John's game over Kansas. And I don't know what's going to happen with Bill Self. I didn't like the way he talked after the game. I mean, I'm no doctor, certainly, you know that, but he's had some heart issues. There's something about these guys, whether you like them or not, longevity, continuity, familiarity. You always know the Jayhawks are going to be there. And what if he did leave? Who was Kansas going to go after? Because one thing they've got a lot of money in Lawrence, Kansas, Matt.
There's a lot to unpack there, Rob, but let me first start. Let me first start with
sorry about that.
To Kevin's reference of the end of the half play. I will tell you, one of the things that we always did, my staff, if we're up big at half, our message was, hey, it's 0-0. We want to create a mentality. We're still focused like it's a 0-0 game and go out and win the second half. And I think that probably helped Coach Oates when he went into halftime, that careless play, because it probably got his message across. Now, I've had a chance of meeting Coach Self when he was a young assistant coach. He actually sent me a handwritten letter when he took the Earl Roberts job, because I sent him a letter. I think he's one of the best in our industry, but I will tell you, I am concerned too. I think, you go through as much health issues as he has. I got out of being a head coach in 2017 the first time, right? I had 26 straight years on that bus at our level. John knows this really well, and Kevin. It's not charter planes, it's charter buses. My first start of my career as an assistant coach, I was driving 15 passenger vans, guys. That's the way I was brought up in the industry, and it takes a toll. It sounded like a guy that needs a break. Now, that's a whole different conversation. We haven't even talked about UNC and Hubert Davis, but I saw Larry Browne came up with something that was really, really poignant today. I saw it on X, supporting Hubert Davis, talking about if he had Caleb Foster, they had some big wins this year. They probably would have been in the Sweet 16. But, UNC is a lot like Kansas, a lot like Kentucky. It's not acceptable to lose in the first or second rounds of the NCAA tournament. That's not what their fan base is going to allow. If Coach Self were to step down, gosh, Rob, I couldn't even imagine right now who would be a candidate, because you would be looking for some of the elite of the elites. I still think, though I'm a miserable Chicago Bulls fan, we have one of the best college coaches ever in Billy Donovan. The problem is in the NBA, it's a little bit like the new NIL. If you don't have the general manager that's getting it done for you, and putting a roster out there, sometimes it's really hard when you're stuck in mediocrity, and that's where the Bulls are right now. I still think Billy was one of the best college coaches of all time. Played for Rick Pitino on that Providence team that went to the Final Four. I believe that was in the 80s, if I'm not mistaken.
86, 87.
87.
That's
87.
Right.
Yeah.
And quite frankly, Coach Self has done a lot. And you look at what he did at Illinois before he got to Kansas. So I hope he stays. Now he's got a little bit of time to regroup a little bit, recharge the batteries, but it didn't sound great post game. I agree.
Yeah. All right, Matt, John, I know you've got to go. Parting comments. This is great stuff. The authenticity of what you just said, Matt, working your way up, that is real. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I'd just say this as we depart, and who knows which 2 of the 16 are left 2 weeks from tonight to tip it off for a championship in Indianapolis. But 10 of the 16 teams left have not won an NCAA championship. So
Wow.
You've got a bunch of blue bloods here, a lot who have not made it all the way to the pinnacle of college basketball yet. So I think we've got a really exciting 2 weeks coming. I think the 4 that make it to Indianapolis, I think Indianapolis does a great job of hosting. I think it's a great venue. It is going to be a tough ticket in Indy, and it's not just about the shrimp cocktail and the bone-in ribeye at St. Elmo's. It's going to be some great hoops here in Indy in about 12 days.
It is. And tell Bubba hello and everybody down there at the Fairhope Fish House. I need some amberjack. You can't get it in Memphis, by the way, John. Thank you so much. Matt, Kevin, thank you more than you know for sharing your time with us. It means so much to our audience and to all of you watching. Share it, like it, subscribe, smash it. We appreciate it so much. And we'll be back on, as we always are, tonight on this channel. The Buddy Martin Show. So a lot to cover. And get out and support our sponsors like the great folks at LandersFordMemphis.com. Open every day of the week. Also a new location, I-240 and Mount Moriah. Brad Bellamy, the general manager. Oh, man, I love that guy. And I love the people at Landers. It's truck month right now. No payments for 90 days, okay? And also remember, if you need a new roof, the folks at MyTownRoofing.com. Don't wait till your roof caves in. Get them to come check it out. Corey Carter, Major Fusel, Chris Fiedler. You know a lot of these guys. Get out there. And HempForPros.com. Aches and pains. You got trouble sleeping. Any problems. They're great folks to help you out. Order HempForPros.com. And hey, let me say for executive producer Brendan Martin, a lot going on. Follow us on Twitter and all the social media, Instagram, Facebook, YouTube. We're putting a lot of content out. Tough loss. I hate the Gators being out, Brendan. Wanted them. I had them as one of my Final Four teams. But you know what? They're being a number 1 seed is a big deal. Gators will be back. Again, they're not spending anywhere close to what Kentucky spent. Both of those teams, rich traditions. I love this. We'll be back on tomorrow. We'll be delving into some spring practice stuff with Pete Cordelli, Ellis Johnson, Dave Bartu on here from College Football Matrix. And do yourself a big favor. When you watch these shows, share them, like them, subscribe. Hey, most often we see the face of Christ in the least among us. Have a great day, everybody. Thanks for watching.